Well, Richard Holden is the Conservative MP for North West Durham and joins us this morning. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Richard, as the nation reflects and the North East reflects. What do you think the North East relationship with the Queen has been?
I think it's been a very strong one, actually. I think you can see over the years many visits to the region, but I think also she embodies some of those real values that the North East, I think, is particularly, is really at the heart of the North East as well. Duty and public service. I mean, she didn't just, we don't just talk about it. She almost, when you think of those words and you think of people doing those things, you think of the Queen. An absolute lifetime of public service, and somebody who did it literally right to the end of her life, keeping going. And often, in politics, and I come on here on every few weeks, and we'll talk about this, what the differences are between people.
Yeah.
And the Queen, and as part of the that continuity. She's always there about what unites us all. She embodies all the things which bring us together. And I think it's moments like this that we also remember those things which bring us together more than anything else, which is why I think so many people feel such a profound sense of loss, especially because she brings that link between all of those generations together. Especially with our link to my grandparents' generation, to the Second World War, and I think that's probably why it feels quite raw for quite a lot of people, actually, even if they didn't necessarily expect it at certain times when they just have a moment of reflection. But I think they do feel a certain personal sense of sadness at what has been a continuous presence in so many of our, lives, no longer being there.
And Richard, I'm sure you came across the Queen or saw, observed her, even if from a distance. What was it about her leadership that, I suppose, people in your position, people in leadership positions or people in service positions can learn from?
I think as I said at the start, that just the notion of just constant duty, I think, realising that you use your position of privilege, in her case a hereditary one, in my case an elected one, for good. And the duty that is a huge privilege, that you are there to do things on behalf of the country, and in her case on behalf of not just our country but also the Commonwealth, and you could see how she was respected around the world as well. And I think for anybody involved in public life, her example is an excellent one. And I think it's probably almost peerless. That transition, other monarchs through history, it was a different time. The transition, and as the Prime Minister said, to the modern Britain we know, from empire to Commonwealth, with the huge changes that's involved around the world, through her own life in the Second World War, and then seeing Britain all the way through from the early 50s to the modern day. And the transformation during that period, and the ability to not be left behind while your country and the world changes, it's quite, when you look at it and you step back and look at it, it is such an inspiration to show that you don't try and stop change, but you try and be part of it and keep it moving in a positive direction. In that role, has required it requires somebody of a unique personal character, which is why I think that those world leaders and religious world leaders as well coming out, I think she managed to be a sort of almost that have that sort of figurehead on a world on the whole world stage, not just for our country.
And every living Prime Minister has paid a very warm, deep tribute. And to think that 15 Prime Ministers served her and spent almost an hour a week, sometimes more than an hour a week with her, and her political knowledge, second to none. But I think what strikes me is the confidentiality. You didn't know what she thought. And I think that must have been a real source of strength to so many Prime Ministers, where I imagine it'd be quite a lonely position, but you've got someone who you can go and talk to once a week who knows probably more than anyone about the politics of the country.
Yeah, I've spoken to several Prime Ministers about, what's it like meeting the Queen, and they've all said, whether they're Labour or Conservative, that the thing is, you've got somebody who's been there, done it, seen it, who is totally confidential, who you can have a nice chat with, have a bit of a gossip with about what's going on potentially, if that's the way a relationship is, and she's got, it's not just the political knowledge she has, it's that sort of international knowledge. And I remember John Major telling me a few years ago that he used to say to her, and she might say, if he was doing an international visit or something, I know him, or I met him, X number of years ago. This is what he's like a bit when he's talking about international leaders, or sometimes even, I knew his father, or things like that. Because she'd been around for so long that she had those connections with people, which have spanned literally over 70 years as the head of state, which is just quite incredible. And I think it just sort of reflects what an enormous asset it is to have that there for our country, and something which is just so far removed from the party politics. I'm sure she had her own views on all sorts of different things, but she never let those get in the way of that role, that duty in public service, which I think she embodied.
Thanks for your tribute this morning, Richard Holden, Conservative MP for North West.